Section 78 of The Toilers of the Sea, by Victor Hugo. This recording is in the public domain. Read by John Greenman. Chapter 4. Turba Turma. For the compass there are 32 winds, that is to say, 32 directions, but these directions may be subdivided indefinitely. The wind classed by its directions is the incalculable; classed by its kinds, it is the infinite. Homer would have shrunk from the enumeration of them. The polar current comes in contact with the tropical current. Here heat and cold combined, equilibrium begins with the shock. The surge of the winds springs forth from it, swollen, scattered, and torn in all directions into fierce tricklings. The dispersion of the gusts shakes the prodigious dishevelment to the four corners of the horizon. All the winds blow there, the wind from the Gulf Stream, which pours out so much fog on Newfoundland, the wind from Peru, a region with a mute heaven where no man has ever heard thunder, the wind of Nova Scotia, where flies the great auk Alca impennis with striped beak, the iron whirlwinds of the China seas, the wind of Mozambique, which abuses the pancays and junks, the electric wind of Japan, announced by the gong, the African wind which dwells between Table Mountain and the Devil's Peak, and which there gains its liberty, the wind of the equator, which passes above the trade winds and describes a parabola whose summit always points to the west, the Plutonian wind, which issues from craters and which is the terrible breath of the flame, the strange wind peculiar to the volcano of Awa, which always causes an olive-hued cloud to rise in the north, the monsoon of Java, against which the casemates called hurricane houses are built, the north wind with its branches, which the English call bush winds, the curved gusts of the Straits of Malacca, observed by Horsburgh, the powerful southwest wind called pampero in Chile and rebojo at Buenos Aires, which bears the condor far out to sea and saves it from the pit where the savage, lying flat on his back and bending his great bow with his feet, is lying in wait for it under an ox hide freshly flayed, the chemical wind, which, according to Lemery, makes thunderstones in the cloud, the harmattan of the Kaffirs, the polar snow wind, which harnesses itself to the fast ice and drags the eternal icebergs, the wind from the Gulf of Bengal, which goes as far as Nijni Novgorod to sack the triangle of wooden booths wherein is held the Asiatic fair, the wind of Cordilleras, agitator of great waves and great forests, the wind of the Australian archipelagos, where the honey hunters ferret out the wild hives concealed beneath the armpits of the branches of the giant eucalyptus, the sirocco, the mistral, the hurricane, the winds of drought, the winds of inundation, the diluvial, the torrid, those which cast into the streets of Genoa the dust from the plains of Brazil, those which obey the diurnal rotation, those which act in opposition, and which caused Herrera to say, "Malo viento torna contra el sol" it's an evil wind that turns contrary to the sun, those which go in couples, conspiring to overthrow, the one undoing what the other does, and the ancient winds which assailed Christopher Columbus on the coast of Veraguas, and those which, for the space of 40 days, from the 21st of October to the 28th of November, 1520, delayed and rendered doubtful Magellan's entrance into the Pacific, and those which dismasted the Armada and blew upon Philip II. There are still others, and how is their end to be reached? The winds which carry toads and grasshoppers, and drive before them clouds of living things across the ocean, those which effect what is called the veering of the wind, and whose function is to compel shipwrecks, those which with a single breath displace the cargo in the vessel and compel her to continue her course leaning over, the winds which construct the circumcumuli, the winds which mass the circumstrati, the heavy blind winds swollen with rain, the hail winds, the fever winds, those whose approach sets the salt springs and the sulphur springs of Calabria boiling, those which make the hair of the African panthers sparkle as they roam the thickets of Cape Pharaoh, those which come shaking from the cloud like the tongue of a poisonous serpent, the frightful forked lightning, those which bring black snow, such is the region. The Douvre reef, at the moment when Gilliatt was constructing his breakwater, heard its distant gallop. We have just said that the wind is the combination of all the winds. This whole horde was arriving. On the one hand, this legion, on the other, Gilliatt. End of chapter 4. Turba Turma.